Hello. It says I'm live, so I guess I'm live. How are you this Monday afternoon? I always feel like it's morning when I'm doing these lives because I got so used to it. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you had a great, restful weekend. Um, you may notice, excuse me, if you check out if you're viewing this on the page, it now says widows and widowers. And my group has been open to widowers as well, and some changes have been made there. It last week I did a very intense uh, 5 day challenge with another coach's 5 day challenge, and one of the things I came away with was that I'm doing widowers a disservice by not including them because they grieve too. And in fact, sometimes it's harder for men because, men don't cry, that kind of thing. You're supposed to hide your feelings. And when they do that, it usually comes out in anger. Well, any of us, if we bottle up our feelings too much, it comes out in anger. And that's not a good thing for you. It's not a good thing for those you take your anger out on. And it's not good for anyone around you. It's definitely not good for you because of the stress that brings on your body and your brain. So welcome, widowers. I hope to see you commenting and asking questions and such. um, Today I found an interesting graphic, I guess, and now I've lost it. That listed the listed a bunch of I can't think of what I want to say. Types of grief, which I had not. I mean, I knew there were different types, and I had identified them, but I never saw them all in one batch like this. I'm trying to move a screen. Sorry about that, guys and gals. Okay, there we go. So without further ado, let's get started. First, there's normal grief. And this is the typical reaction a person has when coping with loss. It may not feel normal to you, but 90%, well, 75%, that's my guess. I haven't seen any statistics on this, but 75 of the grief percent of the grievers that I have been in touch with fall into this category. They're sad, they're confused, they're afraid, they're lonely, they go through all the feels, and the getting used to doing things for yourself, cooking for one instead of two, um, remembering to register your car. That's me. I finally got it registered. Inspections, car type things, because our husbands generally take care of those things. I mean, not all, of course, but if you're in my age group, and we're not saying what that is, you grew up with certain expectations. Women took care of the inside of the house and the children. Men took care of the outside of the house and vehicles. It's just the way it was. Um, Things are changing now, which is nice and it's good. But, you know, if you fall into a certain age group, you definitely are having trouble adjusting, men adjusting to, cleaning. Some men don't know what the proper cleaning is. What do you use on what, and how do you do the laundry, and you know, both of us may have trouble with balancing the checkbook. We don't know how. I did, but I took over the finances in my house long before my husband died. After he decided, well, there's money in the bank, so you know, it doesn't work that way. Anyway, so that's normal grief. You go through stages after a certain period of time, and it's different for everyone. You start to feel maybe like yourself again. You've started to adjust to the way things are now. And while it's not fun and it's not pleasant, you accept that this is the way things are. And you don't break down crying 7 times a day. You don't, you think about him or her often throughout the day, but it's not constant like in the very beginning. So that's normal grief. Anticipatory grief, any of us whose spouse had a terminal illness that we knew about in advance, we've gone through that. You're anticipating his or her death. Sorry, guys, I'm still trying to get used to the, you know, working with men. So, but you want to get anticipatory grief is you think you're ready for it when it comes. In the moment of death, you may feel exactly how you thought you would. Um, with my husband, he lingered for days past the time we thought he would. He was not aware. He was not alert. He was not, he was just there breathing, which we were all really surprised about. So, well, his death was. I feel honored to have been there at that time because I stood by his side in the hospital, held his hand, and said, "We're ready whenever you are." And he opened his eyes, looked at me, and then closed them very slowly, and he was gone. To me, it was peaceful. It was a peaceful death, and I was happy for him that he didn't go out in pain. And many of us have experienced that kind of passing. But some of us, when we get to that point, it surprises us. You thought you would be okay with it, and you're not. You just break down completely, at that moment. Mine didn't hit me until we'd already made arrangements with a funeral home. So that was taken care of. I packed up all our stuff, his stuff and my stuff, because I was living in the hospital with him. And so we packed up everything, and my sons were all with me, all 6 of them, and my dear daughter-in-law, and we went home to my house. Well, I hadn't been in there since he'd gone into the hospital. And I just stood with my back to the door and said, I can't go in there without him. And then I broke down. It was the act of walking back into the house without him. Because the last time I'd been in the house, he was with me. So, yes, at the moment, anticipatory grief it's a tricky. I mean, there were times when I knew his doctor was a chicken. She made me tell him, but she did have somebody from mental health come, and he wasn't much help. He just kind of stood there in the background. But we both cried, and I thought, okay, this is what it's going to feel like. It's not what it felt like. I mean, because he was still there. He was still holding my hand. He was still alert. But I had to tell him that it was terminal, that they're going to stop. If he wanted, they would stop doing anything. And he did agree to that. So anticipatory grief is, that's a tricky one because you do feel grief before, but it's not the same as after. So keep that in mind. If you have a friend, a relative, or if you yourself have a spouse who has not quite passed yet, and you're feeling that anticipatory grief, I don't know how I'm going to live without him. Well, just try to live in the moment and enjoy whatever you can from him or her, and that's one way to get through it. Complicated grief is when it's the other 25%, kind of 20%. That's when a person's grief is intense and ongoing for many weeks, creating an abnormal reaction. Well, that's the that's what they said in the thing I saw. But you know what? No, many weeks. No, I mean maybe if not if we're talking about a spouse, that may be for a grandparent or a beloved aunt or uncle, um, maybe for a pet. I don't know. I know people who grieve their pets for a long time, especially if they didn't have children or their children were grown and gone. That pet has become their their companion, their confidant. You know, it's pet has become their best friend. So that you don't get over that right away. Um, it's when complicated grief is actually when it goes on. It hasn't changed since week one to 3 months, 6 months after. You still feel the same as you did that first day or that first week when it finally hits you. And that's, I mean, where you break down crying 7 times a day. I don't know why I picked 7, but it's a good number. When you break down crying 7 times a day, when um, you're constantly telling stories about him or her. Um, he or she is a big part of every conversation you have. In the beginning, that's fine. People expect that. But when you get into like a year or so out, they shouldn't be part of every conversation. They shouldn't be, um, you shouldn't be breaking down as often. Obviously, there's going to be triggers. His favorite movie comes, her favorite movie comes on TV. Your song comes on the radio. That's why I had to stop. We didn't have a song, but there were a lot of songs that reminded me of him that I knew he liked. I had to stop listening. Um, Complicated grief is when, okay, for normal grief, it's up to you whether or not you get any kind of help with it. You may want help, but you don't necessarily need it. Anticipatory grief, there's nothing to do about that unless it's severe, unless it's really affecting your interactions with your spouse. Um, then you might want to talk to a hospice nurse or, um, find a therapist that will take you quickly and you can talk through your feelings at that point. Complicated grief, you need help. I don't care if you want it or not, you need it. You need to either see a doctor, see a therapist, or get a coach. And all of us, coaches, doctors, therapists, We will help you maneuver through it. We do it in different ways. Doctors generally do it with medication, although not all, you know. And therapists generally talk therapy, especially in the beginning. After that, they may change their if after that, if their style doesn't resonate with you anymore, then you might want to change therapists, which is perfectly okay. They know that, they don't fit every niche, every nook and cranny that you might have in your thoughts and in your brain. And they expect it, they know that you're going to stop seeing them at some point, and whether or not you move to another person is not a problem for them. Coaches, some people will just coach you through the grieving part, and that's it. And they drop you. Once you have a handle on your grief, that's it. Goodbye. I work a little differently. I coach you through the grief and into finding yourself in this new world that you're in, becoming who you are meant to be at this time in your life, finding a purpose for you to go on living, a purpose for you to get out of bed in the morning, a purpose that makes you smile and happy. That's what I help you do. Because not only am I a life purpose coach, I am also a happiness coach. And I love helping people be happy. That's the best part of my job. But you got to get through the hard times before you can get to that point. There's also sudden loss. My sister-in-law walked into her kitchen on a Sunday morning to find her husband dead on the floor. Turns out he died of a brain aneurysm. There are car accidents. There are heart attacks, sudden heart attacks that you weren't expecting. There, all these different sudden deaths that there are. That's difficult, um, because you had no way to prepare yourself for it. Even though anticipatory grief doesn't really prepare you for the actual grief that comes after, you know, the dying. I don't mince words, by the way. I prefer dead over loss or passing, because that's what it is. I always say, I didn't lose my husband. I know exactly where he is. He's in the earth. He's in a columbarium at the church, and he didn't pass. I mean, there was no grade. Do you grade a death on A, B, C, D, and F? No. So he didn't pass. He didn't. I didn't lose him. He died. So I'm sorry if that offends, but I believe in telling things like they are. So there's that. But anyway, with sudden loss, I haven't been there. I don't know what that's like. My father, my mother, we all, for both of them, we expected it. We knew it was coming. Well, not so much my mother. I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Um, we'll get into that maybe more when I talk about guilt, which I talk about guilt quite often, because it's a big deal for us. I have not been in the shoes of somebody who has suffered a sudden loss. I can't imagine it. Just as you can't imagine watching, you know, me watching my husband take 5 months in the hospital and end up, you know, gone, dead. I'm sorry. I didn't silence my phone. I apologize. And that was not letting me. Here we go. Um, I know I'm talking a lot more than 15 minutes, but This is all good stuff. There is disenfranchised grief. That's when a person's loss is not accepted by society. Um, these are things that we don't talk about. There's suicide, drug overdose, um, the death of a person with severe disabilities. Insensitive people will say, I bet you're relieved, or, well, that's one less thing for you to stress about. I mean, really, people have actually said that to other people, and that's just so wrong. Um, but if somebody says that to you, you say, thank you, and move on. Unless you've come up with a really good one liner that fits and is not horribly offensive. But even as I was talking about before, the death of a pet, especially if that pet was so close to you, because, you know, he, she, it was the only thing you felt you had. Um, and even a lost job. If you've been working for 25 years in a job and you thought you were next for a promotion, and instead they called you in and you got all excited, you were going to get promoted, and they told you they were letting you go due to cost measures or whatever. Um, that's a hard, bitter pill to swallow, and especially because then you're older, and a lot of places have problem hiring an older worker. They don't take into account our experience, our wisdom that we've gained over the years. Some companies actually prefer the older worker, but not all. Um, Secondary loss. That occurs after the primary loss. I'm not quite sure what secondary loss. It says occurs after the primary loss, such as death, divorce, or traumatic event. I don't know what any of that means. If you guys know, please mention it in comments. I'm not seeing anybody's comments right now. Oh wait, there is one. There you go. I will answer that question in a moment, after we get through all these. Okay, Lucia? I don't know if it's Lucia or Lucia, but I'm sorry. Let me know which way you prefer. Um, I don't know what secondary loss kind of. I wonder if that means delayed grief. That could be. Um, and that's what I had to some extent. Of course, I grieved for my husband in the beginning. Of course, I did. But then things happened in my life that kind of interrupted the grieving. And I didn't really get back to it that purposely. Get back to it till maybe about 7 years after he died. And it was, I didn't cry all the time, but I was severely depressed. I had no ambition. I was severely depressed. And luckily, I was smart enough to realize that. Talked to my doctor, who sent me to someone who prescribed medication. I didn't, I did talk therapy for a little while, but the medication was working so well and I had found my new purpose. So there was no more reason for the therapy. Um, in case you didn't know, this is my purpose, helping you guys and gals. I grew up, guys meant everybody. So, um, anniversary grief is another one that is mentioned. And that is, of course, um, anything that comes in or around the death anniversary or wedding anniversary, birthdays, anything that marks a major time in your life with him or her. It can even be the wedding of, a birth of a child, a grandson, wishing that your spouse was there to see that grandchild. Um, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one because I kind of experienced that recently. Um, but yeah, anniversary grief, it it passes, but you can feel anticipatory grief towards the anniversary. August 2nd is when my husband died. August 2nd, 10 years before that, was when my father died. Yeah, 10 years exactly apart. And so August 2nd is a bad day in my family for my brothers and me and my sons, and my nieces and nephews who love their grandfather and love their Uncle Danny. So that's a really tough day. And leading up to it can be just as tough. Like I start getting kind of moody up to a month before that. And then sometimes that day, no big deal, you know? Or sometimes that day I need to shut myself in my room, turn on an audio book that will block all the sound and thought and just sleep all day or cry all day, whichever one I get to first. Um, so I'm going through the same things you've gone through and you're going through. I've just kind of learned that it's okay. And I've learned a few little tricks here and there to get through those kind of things. Um, you don't get past them, they're always there. You don't get over your grief, it's always there. It's always there. When you think about them, it feels there. I've gotten to a point where now when I think about my husband, I smile. Sometimes I laugh because he was a funny man. um, yeah, a lot of inside jokes. I can't even tell you now. I mean, I could, but they wouldn't mean anything to you. But he was a funny man. That was his humor was one of the things that made me fall in love with him. So that's it on the types of grief. Now I'll go to questions. How do you suggest to someone that they seek help with your grief? That's a good one. A lot of people have asked that before. She's still in that. Someone I know lost her dad a year ago, and she's still in that first stage of grief. That's a tough one. She's crying all the time, and she can't manage her life. Is that kind of what you're saying? Um, if she's close to you, if it's a dear friend, if it's a sister, a parent, maybe it's your mother. Um, you know, if you're really close to them, you've just got to sit down with them, make some time, take them out for coffee, or over, have them over for lunch, something that's relaxed, and just say, I'm a little concerned for you, and I know someone who can help you. And you can refer them to me, you can refer them to somebody else, you can refer them to their doctor. Um, but just, don't make it sound like you think they're crazy or, like they have some kind of mental illness, because that's not good. Nobody wants to be, people get offended when you do that. Don't even say the word depression, because people get kind of weird when you say, I think you might be depressed, and it's like, no, I'm fine. It's a knee jerk reaction. No, I'm not depressed. Or they may get angry, I'm not depressed, you are, kind of thing. So, yeah, just be kind and say, I'm concerned about you. use I sentences so that they don't feel they're being attacked. But don't be the know-it-all. Don't be the one to say, well, I know it's not good for you to be grieving this hard, this long. You can just say, I think maybe you might need someone to talk to in regards to your grief, and see how the conversation goes from there. Right now, I have three, I think 3 scholarships for my coaching, which means completely free. I would like a testimonial at the end, or as they go, and otherwise it's free. And my one-to-one counseling is counseling. I shouldn't use that word. I'm not a counselor. I'm not licensed. I'm certified. My one-to-one coaching is usually in packages, and it depends where you are at, where you're at, and where you want to end up, which package you'll go for. But that package is for the life of your grief, which is going to be forever, pretty much. So as a scholarship, you will get my coaching weekly, monthly, every other month, however you want to work it. A lot of people have used it weekly for the first month or two, and then maybe twice a month after that for a couple months, and then once a month just to kind of check in on things. And that's generally the way it works out. Not always, but the thing is, though, they have to be willing to put in the work. I don't make things change for them. I ask questions. I might make suggestions. I do give homework. So you got to make sure that they want the help, that they don't like living the way they're living, and they need to get on, move forward with their lives. And let's see. And Facebook user, it doesn't tell me if you haven't given StreamYard your permission. It doesn't know your name. So could it be a family member like brother, sister, etc., that passed after your spouse while you're still grieving for your spouse? Oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's going to make things a little complicated because you have different feelings for each person. I mean, you love them both, obviously, but for your spouse, it was more of a romantic feeling. It was more of a everyday kind of thing where you saw them every day. He was in your bed at night. You did his laundry or whatever. You did things together quite often. With your brother or sister, I don't even want to think about my brothers going. I really don't. Yeah, I'm getting. I don't see them very often. Once every couple of years, if there's a wedding or a funeral, unfortunately. We don't talk every day. And often when we get into I have 3 brothers. We get into a text messaging thing. Somebody will text us, all of us with something. And then it ends up with, the guys generally, insulting each other like guys do. And, telling each other, oh, you were adopted, different things like that. So that's a little, I don't know. That's a tough one. That's definitely complicated grief. It also depends on how far apart they are. Excuse me, my mouth is so dry today. Probably hear it in my throat. Yeah, that's one I think you want to get some help with. I think it's complicated enough that you can't separate the two. Not that you should. Grief is grief. You know, it's still that sadness, that wishing they were here, that oh, I'm going to pick up the phone. No, I'm not going to call them because they won't be answering. My mother's been gone since 2013, and I still get the urge to pick up the phone and call her. I still have her on my Facebook friends list. She's still in my messenger. I will not delete her. And I haven't deleted my husband either. Um, yeah, I just can't do it because if I feel like if I delete them, then they never existed. And I know that's silly and all that, but it's me and it's how I cope. And everybody has to come up with their own coping strategies, which is something I would help with if you came to me for help. Um, I've gone way over 15 minutes. I think I've gone 40 minutes, which is, I think, the longest I've ever spoken on here. So I just want to let you all know that I'm here if you want me, if you need me. And I do have 3 scholarships if you think you can't afford me. I also have the group membership, which is now going to be the group coaching outside of the Facebook group that I have. I have a group coaching program that I'm opening up to both widows and widowers, and it's $15 a month, and you get me live or recorded at least 3 times a month, and I'll be popping in. You know, there will be a separate group, Facebook group for those who have paid to be in the membership in the group coaching. And I'll be popping in and out of there all the time too, because I'll set it up that I get notified when somebody posts or asks a question or leaves a comment. So you get a lot more of me in the group coaching, in the group, the group coaching membership than probably even the one to one. But the one to one is for life. You know, if you think you're good, and we're just touching in with touching base, just a couple times a year, that's okay. You know, if you same thing kind of with the membership, you'll pay $15 a month. Eventually that price will go up, but you will still be paying $15 a month. New members will pay the higher amount. You've got the $15 a month for life. Okay. And I didn't mean to turn this into a sales call. Who asked me a question? Anyway, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday and a wonderful week. I may or may not be, I have to apologize for not being here last week. Last week, I did a very intensive course that was all week, and it was all day, all week. So I just didn't have the time or the energy left to do a live. And maybe that's why I'm talking so much today. Next week, I will be visiting. It will be my last day visiting 2 of my sons, their wives, and my grandson, who was born in November, and I have yet to see in person. So, yeah, um, I don't think I'm going to want to take too much, if any, time away from him. So it might be next week, probably 2 weeks from now, or maybe I'll fit something in the middle of the week next week. Yeah. All right, I've done enough. You're probably bored of me. If you lasted this long, I thank you very much. And tell your friends. All right, bye now.